Welcome today to our Payroll Managers Forum here in Canberra. I'm delighted, I'm Stephanie Males, I'm delighted to have you here with us today. I lead the Canberra Tax and Payroll Consulting practice here in Canberra for PwC. We've got a number of our team in the room as well as around the country, so it's very exciting today. We're having our video conference streaming across the country. There are PwC team members in the room, so if you want to put up your hands and say hi, so please make yourself known to our team here locally. Before we begin, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which each of our offices are meeting today. I would also like to pay my respects to their elders past and present. So today's agenda, we're very fortunate to have Michael Karavis with us, who's the Director of STP at the ATO. But as quite a brief introduction, at PwC we are committed to raising the profile and potential of payroll in Australia. Today we thank you for joining us for our inaugural National Payroll Managers Forum. We have specifically designed these Payroll Managers Forums to bring together payroll professionals like yourselves from all industries and to share experiences and insights about the most important issues and opportunities facing payroll. As I said, we're delighted to have our guest speaker here in Canberra, Michael Karavis, who's the Director of Program Design for Single Touch Payroll at the ATO. Today's session has been designed to allow you time to exchange ideas and concerns with your peers in relation to STP and to bring together your questions for Michael. So with no further ado, I'll introduce Michael. Michael has over 25 years experience in tax administration, with most of the last 20 years focusing on the implementation of new government initiatives, including the Minerals Resource Rent Tax, tax consolidations, as well as working on the ATO change program. My kind of person, Michael, for a person in tax. Michael chairs the Single Touch Payroll Design Working Group, which works collaboratively with a broad range of industry stakeholders on single touch payroll design issues. Please join me in welcoming Michael to the stage.
Thanks, Stephanie, and good morning, everyone, and thanks for the opportunity to talk to everyone here and all around the country. Nice change to actually do one out of Canberra and not have to go somewhere else on a plane at 6 o'clock in the morning, so I'm looking a bit fresher than usual. Single touch payroll, I'm assuming that most people have at least heard of single touch payroll by now. It's been around for quite a few years in different guises, but really has been kicked off in the last 12 months after a government announcement at the end of 2015. Okay, so just a bit of background about why we're changing, some of the drivers for change. I think single touch payroll is probably just a real, a next step in modernisation of the tax system or how business interact with the government. I was at an ABSIR, which is the Business Software Industry of Australia session about 6 months ago, and the head of MYOB was giving just a general presentation around technology in the future, and actually touched on single touch payroll and said, if you're going to design pay-as-you-go withholding today, you design it along the lines of single touch payroll, not in a way that it's done now where you do things and then you come back to them in a week's time or a month's time and look at them again and then report them and then come back at the end of the year and do another reconciliation and come back and then report again. So I think it's at one point it's just a natural evolution of the digitalisation of our of our world. The ATO is not doing this and isn't the world leader on this. It's been around in England as real-time information for a few years now. We've had quite a few conversations and trying to learn from their processes what's happening. I suppose most people, anyone who's involved in New Zealand payroll as well, would know that they're also have made an announcement of moving down the track of a similar initiative, and so is Ireland, and I think there's a few other countries who are also thinking about doing it as well. But this is really a key part of the government's digital transformation agenda and around modernisation, and it's really about also about a client focus and a business focus. So a quick overview of what single touch payroll is. So essentially employers will be able to report to the ATO each payday information on all of their employees around their pay-as-you-go withholding, and also some of their superannuation information. So it's a bit of a change from the current world, in where you don't have to report individual superannuation amounts to the ATO. So as a part of each payday report, an employer will be reporting the same amount essentially as what they put on the employee's payslip as the obligation to pay super. When superannuation contributions are paid, they'll also be reported to the ATO. So this is really about getting some visibility around super guarantee. So as I just mentioned, on payday, the ATO will get salary and wages, tax withheld, and the superannuation obligation. Then when the employer actually makes that superannuation contribution to the fund, that'll be reported to the ATO. That allows us to do a contrast and compare of the two numbers to ensure that people's superannuation is being paid. Employers will have the option to invite their new employees to complete TFN and Super Choice forms online. So we're looking to be able to provide through MyGov a pre-filled TFN declaration and a Super Choice form. Through that Super Choice, employees will get a visibility to their existing forms as well, and that information is then digitally provided straight into to the employer, goes straight into their software product. Obviously, a couple of things we're looking to do there is, one, help people get those questions right when they're filling in those forms, but two, making sure that the information that employers get is good quality and validated. So you think around a super form, when someone makes a super choice and they've got to then go and look up, super fund numbers and account numbers, in this sort of process, basically the employer will be getting information that the super fund's already provided to the ATO, so you don't start getting that reverse workflow of, someone writes down on a form, this is my account number, you go to make a payment, the fund comes back saying, no, they're not in this fund, or this is the wrong number. So it's about trying to streamline those processes. And another key part is around actually removing payment summaries out of the system. So the concept is that you're reporting every payday. Essentially the data that you're providing is a year-to-date payment summary. So the data fields are very much based on what people receive in a payment summary. So the concept there is that the ATO will already have that information. It'll be available to the individual in MyGov and be pre-filled into the tax return. Tax agents will have access to that information. So employers will no longer have to provide their employees with a payment summary. Understand that there might be a bit of a cultural change for employees in that space as well, just to get used to it. Just in that case, talking to a lot of the software developers, most of them are probably going to support the ability to keep giving payment summaries even though there's not an obligation, just to allow businesses to make a choice about whether they want to just, even though they don't have the obligation to give them to their employees. I think, my experience from the tax office would be, and our expectation is that regardless of how many times you tell people you're not going to get one, and you can send them emails, you can just imagine by the 14th of July how many people would be ringing up personnel saying, where's my payment summary? So it's a choice for a business about, is it easier to give them if you've got the functionality? And I think it's going to be a cultural change over time for people to be weaned off of that. Okay, the law for single touch payroll. The actual law for single touch payroll is quite simple. I'm not sure if people are as retentive as I am, but and have gone down and read it word by word. Probably had to because I was involved in writing it, so that's a bit different. But essentially the law is quite simple. It sets out this concept of who has to report. So it's got a new definition of a substantial employer. We weren't able to call it a large employer because the tax law has got, I don't know how many definitions of what large is. So we came up with a new one. But essentially it's about having 20 or more employees on the 1st of April each year. If you do have 20 or more employees, then you're required to start reporting STP from the following 1 July. What employees do you include? So in the headcount, that's common law employees. When it comes down to who do you have to report, it's a slightly expanded definition and actually runs off the withholding laws about different types of withholding payments that are included in within that. And so the key additions there are things like company directors, office holders, religious practitioners. So they have, so they're not technically employees, but are subject to pay-as-you-go withholding, the same as a salary or wage earner. How often do I have to report? So employers are required to report payments, the amounts of withholding, and some superannuation information, as I described earlier. And when do you have to report? You have to report on or before the day that you make the withholding, which is essentially on or before payday. So the day that an individual would normally get their pay deposited into their bank account in the modern world. I think we've got some guidance out now that talks about, it's not technically the day the money goes in the bank, that the day would be expected, because we know that there's been experience where, you send the bank file to the bank on the Wednesday, and just so happens that payday's Thursday, but those people who also bank with that bank start getting their money on Wednesday. There's been guidance around what to do on the 30th when that falls on the 30th of June and the 1st of July. I'm sure everyone has been through that experience every so many years when, we have 27 pays in a year, or alternatively on the pay on the first day. It's the same rule. So essentially, if normal payday is Thursday, that's the day you have to report by. Who's affected by single touch payroll? So the tax office got at the top of the screen. The tax office got this new definition called digital service provider. We used to say software developers, but the reality is in the digital space there are a whole range of different players involved. But really, in single touch payroll, they are payroll solution providers, and also some of the businesses who are looking at providing SBR services, so transmission to the ATO. So single touch payroll will be reported through standard business reporting. Probably have a bit of experience around that from SuperStream, and so there are some entities in the market who are looking to partner with software developers about putting in place some messaging services, so software developers don't have to build the SBR functionality. Obviously, employers with 20 or more, imagine that's most of the people attending today, fit into that category. Employees with 19 or less, whilst not required to report under single tax payroll, can. It will generally be determined by if they're using payroll software and that payroll software is upgraded to STP. The expectation is most of those smaller businesses will just naturally come into single touch payroll. Employees, probably a reasonable change for employees, but not until we start getting to tax time, in that their experience will be, their information will be available on MyGov to see throughout the year progressively, and also their end of year experience will change slightly when they don't get a payment summary, but we'll be getting that digitally from the ATO either through pre-fill and MyTax, or their agent will have access to that data. Obviously tax and BAS agents are also pretty key in this space. BAS agents very active in payroll processing at the smaller end of the market, around as bookkeepers. Okay, so the implementation timeline. 1st of July just gone. So in the original announcement, it was put out that the ATO would allow early adopters to come into single touch payroll from 1 July 2017. What's happened is we've had a limited release, so we have got a small number of software developers who have developed a single touch payroll solution, and some of their customers are already reporting, so we're getting live reports of real data. It's been run as a limited release just to make sure that we're bedding down the technology and the messages are flowing as they should be. It's been quite positive. We have had a couple of teething problems, as you'd expect with a big IT change, but essentially it's running quite smoothly. People are getting their messages through. The businesses are able to log onto the portal and see that their message has been processed. So it's looking quite positive. And as you said, on the 1st of October, we'll be looking to open up and have some more developers come online. Underneath the line, on the 15th of September, give or take a few days, the ATO will be looking to be publishing a whole update on our website of information for employers. What's not on here is that just in the last month, we've published a lot of documentation for our DSP, so the payroll software providers. So some of you may have seen there's a document called a Business Implementation Guide, which has got, I think it's about 30 or 40 pages, but there's about half of that is detailed business rules of what a business needs to do each payday. It goes into a whole range of different scenarios around what do you do with out-of-cycle payments, what do you do at the end of the financial year, what do you do with amendments or fixes, as we call them in STP, what do you do with foreign employment and those types of things. So it goes right down into pretty low-level rules, which generally software developers love, to understand what to do each payday for a whole range of different scenarios. There are also a number of business scenarios that have been published. I think there's around 50 or 60 at the moment, and the final document runs into well over 100 pages of scenarios that will be published over the next few weeks. But we are going through a process at the moment around rewriting that into language for an employer to have the same information available for employers as well. And that should be out in September. Also in late September, the ATO will start to engage in into some correspondence out to businesses. So those businesses with 20 or more employees, I think we've actually gone down to 15 to make sure that we're capturing those who are growing. We'll start to get some correspondence, and it's a bit of a call to action, an awareness of, remember STP's coming, engage with your software provider, and some things that you should start to think about to start getting ready. In March next year, we'll be bringing the employee commencement process will come online. And then on the 1st of April, as I said before, is the day that you do your head count around whether you've got 20 or more employees. And then if you have got 20 or more, start reporting from 1 July. Of course, if you're ready and your upgrade's in place, you can start reporting at any time from now, from October. Okay, so this is just a bit of a diagrammatic of what single touch payroll is, trying to demystify and show that STP isn't really that scary at all. So essentially the concept here is that the employer runs their payroll using their BMS, the business management system. It generates pay slips as it would now, a banking file, and it would also generate another file, which is the single touch payroll file, which is transmitted to the ATO through the SBR standard business reporting channel. Essentially that report is a report of every employee that you've paid on that day. It's very much, as I said, modelled on a payment summary, so it's a year-to-date payment summary, so it just bills every fortnight or every week on each payday, gets updated. So we take that information and we run it through our matching engines to make sure that we can identify the individual. And so information is posted against both the employer and the employee. I think the green box used to say employee on there. But for the employee, that information is then made available on MyGov, so they can log in at any time throughout the year and see their year-to-date position, which should marry up to what they're seeing on a pay slip. If they've got more than one employer, they can see all of their employers in one place. PLS is the practitioner lodgement service, which is making that information available to their tax agent at the end of the year to do their tax return. And it's also made available into MyTax if they do their tax return themselves online. For the employer, again, information's made available online through the portal so they can see a record that has been received if they want to jump online and see that. One of the big changes that will be happening from July is that for those who pay their withholding on the BAS, we will start to pre-fill their activity statements with the information from STP. So obviously each payday will understand how much you've paid everybody and how much tax you've withheld. So we'll provide that information back to the employer as a part of the information we provide on the BAS. For large withholders, which I imagine that most people here are who pay their withholding weekly and once a month or once a quarter fill in the W1 label on a BAS, that obligation will be removed from September for large withholders. So if you're reporting through a single touch payroll, you no longer have to report that statistical label W1 on the BAS, obviously because we've already got the data each payday. Oh, and that last little bit is that the employer will pay the BAS, of course. The most important part. Okay, so a little bit more around the law. So what happens if I'm not ready or I can't report? So Understanding that STP is very much requires access to software and being able to do things digitally, and there's an understanding that not everybody can do that, so the law does have exemptions. The Commissioner can do a class exemption by a legislative instrument, or can do an individual exemption based on people's circumstances. One group that we've been looking at to put in place a class exemption is around seasonal employers. So if you go back to the concept that you do a head count on the 20 on the 1st of April, there's a number of businesses who, just because of seasonality, will have 20. I think that the classic one is that's harvest time, but it was pointed out to me that next year, the 1st of April, is also Easter, which will be the Royal Show in Sydney. So there'll be people who have 50 employees for a week and 2 for the rest of the year. So that's the concept of giving those people the opportunity to opt out. And that process will just be a pure mathematical process. We're just pulling together some guidance of saying, if you're 20 on that date, but for, I think we're looking at 10 of the previous 12 months, you're less than 20, you automatically can assume you've got an exemption. What happens if I make a mistake? Very early on in this process, when I started consulting around single touch payroll, this was the first thing that got shouted at me across the room from payroll people, is that we are forever making adjustments. If we're going to report to you in real time, you're going to see all these things that you never see now until the end, because we fix it all up and make it all pretty, and we give it to the end of the year, and you've got no visibility of this. And so what we've done, and what the government agreed to, is that within the law there's this concept of a grace period. So essentially what it says is that you can correct an error in a later payroll report without having to go back and amend the original one. So if you find that you've made an error in an STP, well, an error in payroll essentially, which I'm sure you've all experienced in payroll, someone's come and, my pay's wrong, you didn't include something, or, what's on my pay slip doesn't marry what you put in my bank, whatever reason. The concept we've designed is that you go back and you fix up the error in your payroll system, and then, because we're using year-to-date figures, that would update the year-to-date figures, and you just report those fixes in the next report, and they'd be included in the year-to-date figures. So the concept is we don't want employers having to go back and re-amend reports that they've already lodged. If someone's been paid on the wrong pay rate for the last 6 months, we don't want you going back and regenerating 6 months worth of pay reports to the ATO. The other key thing around that is failure to lodge penalty. Obviously it's a tax form and you've got to lodge it by the due date, and it just runs off the normal tax laws that, if you lodge late or you don't lodge, there's a penalty. What the government has done in the STP law is they made it quite overt that there's a recognition that this is going to make businesses start reporting much more frequently. I think someone's come back with a calculation that one large company is going to report 357 times a year, because they've got multiple payroll systems, they've got people on weekly, fortnightly, monthly. So there's the expectation there will be a lot more reporting. So what the government has said, rather than the ATO come forward, which we would have done this case, and said, this is around transition, there won't be penalties until it's bedded down. Government actually put in to the legislation that there won't be any failure to lodge penalty for the first 12 months, with a small caveat of unless the Commissioner issues you with a written notice. And that's just there, so it's not a 12-month holiday from reporting. It's that, if it takes you some time to get your systems in place and get it working and smoothly, we're not going to come out, and it's about help and support for the first 12 months, not around compliance. And what don't I have to do in the future if I report via STP? So one of the main ones is around the removal of payment summaries. So if you've reported information through single touch payroll, then you don't have to give that individual a payment summary, and you don't have to report that payment summary to the ATO. Also, there's a choice for employers that the way STP's been designed, you can also use that payroll report to notify the ATO of a TFN declaration. When we looked at the design, essentially the information on the TFN declaration and the information in an STP report, a lot of it was the same. Who's the individual, what's their TFN, what's their name and their address, who the employer is. Most of the information was there, and when you look at the timing, most people get paid within 14 days of when they start work. So rather than, if we're getting that information in that time frame, you can add a couple of fields in from the TFN declaration into the report, and that also satisfies your TFN declaration lodgement. The rules of reporting are fixed. A lot of definition about what to call it, an amendment, a correction, and I kept getting told that these mean a whole range of different things to payroll people, so we came up with a completely new word again, which is around a fix. But this goes back to that concept under the period of grace. So what we've put into the rules within the big business implementation guide, falling straight into acronyms, and what will be in the employer guidance is that essentially when you have to fix up someone's payroll report, you've got a period of time to report that. So essentially the idea is you identify the error, usually the employer will come and notify you that something's wrong with my pay. You fix that up in your payroll system, that updates your payroll system, and then you can report that within a number, within 14 days. So most of those would be reported in the next payroll event. Understanding that not everybody gets paid, people stop work and there's corrections that have to be made. There is another process called an update event, so you can actually provide an update of the last record that you sent through for an individual without it having to be attached to a pay. And you can use that after the end of the year if you need to do any end of year adjustments. And there's also a process at the end of the year to finalise that record for the year. And also recognising that people find errors later in the stage as well. You can use that service the same as you do for an amended payment summary now. Okay, what can I do now to get ready? All right, so I think one of the key things is that look at your current processes. As I tried to show before, at one level, it shouldn't change how you currently run your payroll. At the end of when you run your payroll should, I imagine they do, generate a number of reports. An STP report would just be another report that you'd then send to the HO, just as you'd send a banking file to the bank. But there is an opportunity, I think, here for people who have, over time got manual processes in place that may be sustainable, may not be sustainable. If you're going to have to start reporting in real time, it may be an opportunity to look at some of those processes. I think a key one is to work with your digital service provider, i.e. your software vendor, to understand when that solution will be ready. So as I said, there are a couple of developers who already have a product and are reporting. They're probably some of the smaller houses which are a bit more nimble in their development. Imagine most people here are using some of the larger software companies. Understanding is that they're in a position now they're going to start coming out over the next few weeks to start giving some updates about the timing of when their products will be ready. Start looking at a transition implementation strategy about how you can implement that change into your software, understanding that not everyone just picks up an upgrade and can use it straight away. And keep informed and talking to your advisor. I think, especially around your tax agent and your bookkeeper for those who rely on those people around payroll, or alternatively, other payroll advisors as well. Okay. So what's the ATO doing? So we're doing some bulk correspondence, as I mentioned, towards the end of September. Most or all substantial employers, according to our records, will get a contact from the HO, get a letter, give you just a bit of a call to action about remember STP's coming and a couple of things you can do to get ready. We've got relationship managers in place for the software developers, and I think that there's some being put in place for some of the very large employers with more complex systems. There's a number of events such as this one, but the HO also runs some events. We run every 6 months. We have a business engagement forum, which is live streamed as well, and a number of webinars. So we run webinars quite frequently, and I'm sure that some of you will get some invites to some webinars over the next few months. Further information, obviously, there's information on our website. As I said, towards the end of September, there will be a lot of information for targeted to employers about what they need to do, and around an explanation of a whole of the more complex rules around single touch. Probably more of the complex rules around payroll circumstances and what that means for single touch payroll. So it's really around recognising complexity in payroll and trying to provide guidance for businesses what to do when you have some of these more complex scenarios. And of course you can write to us at singletouchpayroll@ato.gov.au. Okay. Thank you very much.